Hi, I'm Kendra. Thanks for tuning into this YouTube channel of our autism journey. I imagine if you're watching this channel, then you are someone who has someone close to you that you love in your family that is on the autism journey yourself, and you're looking for someone to relate to and maybe have an idea of what's to come in future years if your child is younger than a teenager. That's really the target audience of what I'm looking for here. I just want to share my story. I'm by no means an expert in anything autism related. I've learned the hard way by being a parent. My son Dylan, you'll learn a lot about over the next few videos. I want to introduce you to him. He's 15 now. He's on the autism spectrum, low functioning, nonverbal predominantly. He, like I said, he's 15 years old, 186 pounds, 5 foot 6 inches tall now. So naturally, we've learned a lot over the years, some things that work, some things that don't, and that's really what we want to share, a series of videos on our autism journey. So if you know someone that might benefit from watching these videos, please subscribe to my page, share my page with them. I'd really appreciate it. And also leave me comments. If you've learned something along the way you'd like to share with me, I would love to hear that. That's the one way that we've been able to make some progress over the years, is learning from others on the same path that we're on. So I want to keep the series on a positive note because naturally I love my son and I wouldn't trade my son for the world. There are a lot of wins every day and there are a lot of challenges every day as well. So I want to be real and talk about some of those challenges at the same time. So the plan is to alternate, try to do a video each week, alternate 1 week of kind of a documentary of what we went through, some of the activities we did for the prior week, and then the alternating week I'd like to pick a specific topic to talk about either a tip that we've tried or something we've experienced over time throughout the years, or even something that we haven't experienced yet that we're intimidated about. So thanks for tuning in, and let me tell you the story about us. So initially, my pregnancy with Dylan was normal. Didn't have any abnormalities of any kind. Had a normal childbirth with him, and he's my second child. And I would say overall things went really well during pregnancy and during birth. Didn't notice anything unusual about Dylan or his progress until about his 12-month checkup. I recall at that well child visit, they asked the typical questions about how many words that they're speaking, are they pointing at things that they want or need, and I remember most of the answers to those questions were, no, I haven't really noticed him do that, and he might say mama or dada, but I don't think he's really saying any other words. And I remember being terrified whenever the doctor suggested that we have a screening done for autism. I had no idea what that meant or what that meant for our future and Dylan's future at the time. So naturally we've learned a whole lot over the years. A lot of it is intimidating, and in a lot of ways Dylan is the perfect child as well, especially from a teenage standpoint. So a little bit about our early years. Dylan's father and I, we divorced when Dylan was about 2. Again, Dylan is my second child. I have a 17-year-old, Dylan is 15, and then I also have a 14-year-old daughter. Very early on in their childhood, their dad and I split up. So Dylan has been accustomed to a split home since really the beginning, which for an autistic child that can be very challenging because, as you know, I'm sure they're into routines and structure and they like things a particular way. I can tell you now that Dylan's 15, he's been forced to adjust to that. Naturally, rules are a little bit different at each home, and expectations are a little bit different at each home. So he's had to adjust to that, and I think it's really odd, but he almost looks forward to, we call it the change of scenery, of going back to dad's house or coming back to mom's house. We still and have always alternated homes. We have them about a balanced schedule. I have them almost a full week, and then they stay at dad's almost a full week off and on. So he's adjusted to that really well. The thing about his little sister, since the beginning, he has loved his little sister. The two of them have had a very close connection. Dylan wants to do everything sister does. He wants to wear the same clothes sister wears. He has loved her from the beginning. They're about 14 months apart, so really close in age, and maybe that helped with some of that connection as well. But Dylan and his sister have a very close connection. One of the challenges in the early years, especially with Dylan and his sensory issues, was he would get really, really agitated whenever she would cry or laugh really loud. Any extreme would cause Dylan's senses to really flare up, and really early on we noticed that she would be a target of his from an aggressive standpoint. He usually would target her face, try to scratch her face or around her mouth, and so we realized that maybe if she was crying, he was trying to tell her, that hurts my ears, or that bothers my senses, and I need you to stop doing that, but it was obviously an inappropriate way to do that. So we had a really difficult time in the early years making sure that she was protected and wasn't in an unsafe situation, and trying to teach him the proper behaviors or de-escalation strategies to try to get away from whatever it was that was bothering him without targeting his sister. So as we go through future videos, I'll talk more in depth about each one of these challenges or some of the tips that we've applied. But this video, I wanted to really introduce you to who we are and where we've come from up to where we are now at a high level. Dylan went to a typical preschool, public preschool, and then he did a short time at a local special needs school who accommodates children up until kindergarten on the special needs. And so that was a real blessing. There's a waiting list typically for that, and he was able to get in about his third birthday. So he spent about 3 years at this special school, and we loved it. It was really good for him. Get him in amongst his peers and used to a little bit of structure and some routine in a classroom setting that wasn't at home. Unfortunately, that school only kept them up until kindergarten age, so we were forced to transition him into the public school setting, which is really our only alternative here locally. Not really any private schools that accommodate special needs kids that are not verbal, unfortunately, where I live. So he's done public school since kindergarten, and we have had our ups and downs, significant downs in many cases. And we're at the point now where we've got legal advocates involved with us. So when we have team meetings with the school district, we have the district's legal team in the room with us, as well as our legal team. Thankfully, we're at a place now where we're progressing as a team in Dylan's best interest. But there was a period of time where it was extremely challenging. So I'll do a future video that'll talk in more detail about some of the challenges that got us to the place where we had to bring in some legal advocates and how we went about doing that, and some of the benefits of that as well. So kindergarten through 5th grade for Dylan probably were some of the better years in the public school system, and that was for a couple of reasons. One, primarily, I would say, is that we were blessed that he had one specific teacher that worked with him through most of elementary school, with just a few exceptions. And she is a godsend. She is a special needs mother herself, and she was not intimidated by Dylan's challenges and loved him like we loved him. Unfortunately, had to transition out of elementary school into the secondary school system, and about 6th grade is really where we started to see significant deterioration in his behaviors specifically. I would say that some of that probably had a little bit to do with hormones naturally, which we are trying to understand what that means and how to work with that. But from 6th grade on, we saw some more significant behavioral issues with Dylan. It went to where, from previously when he would get agitated, where he would target his sister, to where he would target really anyone who is close by him. I remember a couple of significant circumstances that we were in that felt like we had lost control. And those points in time, which I'll talk about in more detail in future videos, there were angels nearby that saved us, really, but I can say it that way. If it weren't for the angels, I just don't know how we would have survived some of these circumstances. What we found was that Dylan's behaviors had regressed to a point where he was extremely aggressive when he would get overstimulated or upset about something. Many times it seemed like it was because he had a difficult time communicating his wants or needs, or he thought we didn't understand what he wanted or needed. That seemed to escalate situations. And then of course sensory stimulation was another significant trigger for what we would call meltdowns in behaviors. I had one particular incident where we were in our backyard and just finished swimming as a family in the swimming pool, and I can't recall now, it was a few years ago, what escalated the situation, but I can tell you it got to the point where Dylan was slamming my back glass door open up against the wall of the house over and over, and I was afraid that the glass was going to shatter, and actually busted the frame on the door. And I remember trying to get him to stop and yelling, and his sister crying, and it got really loud. And one of the angels in our life, a neighbor who I had not met yet, she lived a few houses down the road, she heard the commotion and literally came through my front door, which again, I've never met this person at that time before in my life. She came through my front door and she took control of the situation, which if you're a parent and you've dealt with meltdowns before in a young teenage child, it's very difficult to concentrate. Your emotions are high, and I was so thankful for her for coming in and helping to intervene in the situation. I had gotten him to a quiet corner of the inside of the house, and that's where we had a bunch of pillows and bean bags thrown on the floor. I encouraged him to finally lay down, and I threw a couple of blankets on top of him to kind of dull the senses a little bit. And she sat and helped to make sure he stayed calm while I got my wits about me again and took a breath and just tried to get my heart to stop racing. I was so thankful for her, and naturally, probably goes without saying, but she's a special need mom herself. She recognized just from hearing what was going on, probably what the situation was. And so again, I think that it was just God watching over us and putting someone there at the right time who had no fear and came in and helped us with that situation. We had another situation where we were at a grocery store and Dylan started having a meltdown, and at this point they had deteriorated to a place where he was significantly hurting us as well as himself. So he would scratch, kick, hit, bite, pull hair, but he would take his balled up fist and bust himself in the nose to the point that it was bleeding. And if he couldn't get his fist to his nose, then he would roll over and he would hit his own face into the floor or the wall or whatever was close by, just to try to bust himself in the nose. We had a significant meltdown at a public grocery store just like that, where at this point he was big enough that it was extremely difficult for me to control him, to pull him out of the grocery store and back to our vehicle. It was everything I could do just to get him on the ground and try to physically control him and keep him from hurting himself or someone else. Got to the point where we had the store employees intervening. Some of them didn't know what was going on and thought it was a misbehaved child, but most of them, again, were angels, running and getting fans and towels to mop up blood and helping to call police and firefighters. And it ended in a situation where the firefighters had to put him and restrain him on a stretcher and put a spit mask on him, and that was probably the most traumatic and terrifying event I had been through as a mother to see my son in that state. And it took a long time after that to feel comfortable to take him out in public again, a long time. And even the first few times taking him out in public, my blood pressure would rise, even if he appeared to be calm. It was, it's really best described as PTSD in a parent going through a traumatic event like that. So those several similar experiences we went through, both in public and at home, kicking holes in walls, smashing picture frame just to smash the glass, running and jumping into other people's yards and trying to get in their doors. I could go on and on and on. Got us to a point where we realized we had to figure out what we needed to do different. It was difficult on our family, it was difficult on our emotions, and we were concerned about Dylan and his well-being. So there's a recent period in time where we had considered even a residential school out of state for Dylan, which again is one thing that I would have never ever considered sending my son, let alone my special needs son, out of state to live. But the situation had become so difficult, uncontrollable, and unsafe for himself and for us that we even had seriously considered something like that. At this point with the school district, he was being sent home almost every single day. He was suspended numerous times, and to the point where he was placed on homebound instruction for a period of more than 6 weeks. So this is the point where we got more involved with our psychiatric team, involved with the legal advocacy team to help us to work with the school district. And so this was probably a year and a half ago now. And thankfully, after two state psychologists coming on board at the request of the school district, a behavior plan was introduced within the school classroom setting, and some medication changes with the psychiatrist. We're in a much more, knock on wood, I got a wooden table in front of me here, much more manageable place now, both at home and at school. Quality of life's improved quite a bit. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have issues. We still do. What we were seeing were significant meltdowns almost every single day. It has become much more rare now. So we're thankful for that. So that's a little bit about where we've been up to where we are now with Dylan being 15 years old. Dylan is blessed. He's blessed, I'd like to think, with me and his siblings who love him very much, but he's blessed with an even bigger family. His dad, his stepmother, another brother, and then my parents are a godsend to me as well. I would not be able to do that, do life without them. And they love Dylan. They specifically moved closer within just a few blocks, which is really nice. If Dylan is interested in going on a walk, we walk to Grandma and Grandpa's house. And when Dylan's at my house, we're almost at Grandma and Grandpa's house every single day for a few hours. So that's his place he gets to go, raid their pantry. So that's a little bit about us as a family. I wanted to give you an introduction video first, followed by some themed videos coming up in the next week or so on more specific topics related to some of the experiences that we've had. So in future videos, I'll share more about Dylan, some of the things he likes, some of our struggles and challenges, some of the tips that we've learned over time that work really well for us. But I'd love for you to share in comments or messaging some of the things that you've found that works for you, some of the experiences that you have that maybe I haven't had yet. But if nothing else, maybe you can relate to the intense love that we have for our kids that are on a spectrum just like our typical kids. And also, besides love, the fear and the uncertainty that naturally is there as well. So hopefully you can relate to that. And just really appreciate you watching this, and subscribe to my channel. Click the little bell icon on YouTube. You'll see that there, and that'll notify you when I post my next video. And please share. So until next time, keep strong, love fiercely, and God bless. Thank you. Good job, Dan. Say bye.
Bye.